Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia. Welcome back to another episode of our Art of War guide series as we continue our discussion about Han army compositions. Last week, we kicked off this brand new guide series by looking at the makeup of armies as we took a top-down approach to army composition through looking at the generals that lead the army. In particular, we looked at the importance of commanding generals in terms of the win commanding bonuses. But as we can see here, there are two other types of bonuses in the own army bonuses and the own retinue bonuses. So for this episode, we're going to take a bottom-up approach and look at the 5 individual classes of Han generals and their own retinue bonuses that they each provide to first determine the optimum retinue compositions for each of these classes individually. Then in the future, we can combine these optimum retinue setups in various combinations to form our optimum army compositions as well, as after all, the army depends on soldiers, even in romance mode. So let's get things started with the commander class, who has 6 skills on their skill tree that provides own retinue bonuses. And of the 6, if we just take one to do an overview, for example, we have composure, which grants all archers and crossbow siege weapons in the retinue the ability to use fire arrows. Now we see that in addition to this skill also provides the general with 8 points of cunning, which will increase the ammo of the retinue and enable night battle as a own army bonus, which is a different type of bonus that is shared among all units in the same army. Now for the purpose of keeping the scope of this guide narrow and focused, we're not going to be discussing these impacts right now, as they will be separate topics in future episodes. Now, the most important skill we need to highlight here of the 6 is the nobility skill, which is exclusive to commanders. And because of its exclusivity, it helps define the intended playstyle of commanders from a game design perspective. And the bonus here that it provides is an increase to range block chance for all melee cavalry in the retinue by 20%. Now this is an amazing bonus that makes melee cavalry the ideal defensive counter to range. And the reason for this is quite simple. Most Han melee cavalry start the game off with 65% range block chance and a passive skill that grants them 50% missile resistance. So once you combine the two and add in the nobility skill here, you end up with a unit with 85% range block chance and 50% missile resistance. This means that only 15% of the incoming missile fires will even hit your unit, and of those 15%, you will only be taking half damage. Then if you add on extra stats like armor and the fact that because cavalries are quarter-size units, the per unit health of each cavalry unit are actually quite high compared to infantry. So you can actually take way more arrows before even losing a full unit, thus maintaining your offensive capabilities while forcing the enemy range units to essentially waste their ammo as they end up dealing less than 5% of their total potential damage once you factor in all the defensive stats. Then if you take a look at some of the other own retinue skills that are available to a commander, you'll notice a ton of other synergies with melee cavalry, such as battle running speed boost from mobility or charge speed boost from intensity. Thus, all combined together, one of the optimum builds for the commander class is one that would include 6 units of your best available melee cavalry, like the one shown here. However, this is not the only optimal build, as melee cavalries are rather weak offensively. So if your sole purpose is to have them tank up enemy range attacks, then 1 or 2 will suffice, and recruiting all 6 might just be handicapping your own offensive capabilities. Therefore, if we instead take a look at the skills of composure, perception, and mobility, we can create an alternative build that is more optimized for offense, where we would run 6 horse archers that would take full advantage of the faster speed boost for mobility for kiting, the fire arrows from composure for destroying enemy towers, and ignore force penalty from perception to help run away from pursuing enemy cavalry units. And of course, we can even combine the best of the 2 worlds and run a hybrid composition that takes full advantage of all 6 skills, where we will end up recruiting only 1 or 2 melee cavalry, while recruiting horse archers for the rest. And this is particularly a great strategy if you happen to be playing as a faction that features some unique horse archers, whether they are the Qiang Hunters from Ma Teng and Sima Ying, or White Horse Fellows from Gong Sun Zan. Now, can you build your commanders differently? Certainly. Sometimes the most optimal builds are not what you need in your campaign. For example, if you desperately lack frontline units in your current army, then spamming spear guards on your commander is probably the correct choice. But as you can see from the own retinue skills, it is far from the optimal choice, because ideally, if you're going to recruit spear guards out of need in the campaign, then you should recruit them on a champion, as they're designed to recruit retinues of polearm infantry. And the reason for that comes once again to the champion's exclusive skills, which we can see here is Trust, which grants all spear infantry 10% extra armor. Now, spear is a loosely used term here, as polearm would have been a better choice, since Ji and glaive users can also receive this bonus as long as they are classified as a green polearm unit. And aside from this skill, the champion class actually does not have a lot of own retinue bonuses, and most of them simply provides utility, like guerrilla deployment from Guile, fatigue resistance from endurance, and some battle running speed from mobility. Now, for the spear guard spam that we just talked about, you don't need battle running speed from mobility, as your army is designed to be a standing army for defense. But all the other skills will be helpful, as armor, fatigue resistance, and the ability to deploy anywhere in the beginning of battle are all very helpful to preserve the innate strength of shielded polearm units themselves, as they all naturally come with pretty high range block chance, excellent formations, and charge reflect against mounted. Now, this of course is not the only way you can build your champions, as you can take a more offensive approach as well, where you would go off to use high melee charge bonus units such as Spear Warriors or Protector of Heavens to take advantage of the battle running speed bonus. Now, many of you might note that this type of retinue would get shredded by enemy archers, but thankfully, because your champion also have access to guerrilla deployment and fatigue resistance, you can easily shorten the charge distance or even be able to hide your units in forest in order to close that gap between you and enemy range units. Of course, this strategy would be even better in ambushes where the map is already designed for this type of charging attacks. Then moving on, we have the Strategist Class, which has 5 own retinue bonus skills in Composure, Resourcefulness, Perception, Judgment, and Guile. Now, most of these skills we've already seen in other classes, but like all the other classes, there are a few unique ones. And for Strategists, there's actually 2 unique skills that are exclusive to them that will help define their intended playstyle in Resourcefulness, which grants all trebuchets flaming shots, and Judgment, which grants a bonus of 25% range base damage. So naturally, one of the most iconic retinue setups in the game since launch is the 2 trebuchet plus 4 of your best archer units. And of course, if you don't need morale debuffs from fire arrows, then perhaps crossbow units can also replace them, as their high armor piercing damage have pretty good value. And we're not going to say too much about trebuchets, as they are the unit with the longest range in the game at 500, and it's probably the most vital piece to any army, as even a single unit of this retinue will change AI behaviors in battle, since it will force the AI to charge at your formations, no matter if they're on the offense or defense, as they calculate that standing in place will only make them easier targets. Now, of course, if this type of trebuchet advantage ever bores you, you can opt for a horse archer build, similar to the one that we have shown earlier for the commander class. In this case, you are going to lose out on the 25% battle running speed and charge speed bonuses, but you will pick up 25% extra range damage. So the setup would be great at punishing enemy infantry, but much worse at kiting away from enemy cavalry compared to the commander variety. So be mindful of how you use them. Now at this point we can probably move on to Sentinels, which is actually one of the most flexible classes in the game, as they can field a wide variety of optimum army compositions, even though they are designed to host mainly melee infantry units. as one of their exclusive skills in Diligence will grant their retinue 5 points of extra melee evasion only if they are melee infantry. So this is a nice little stat boost, but by itself it's far from game changing, whereas their second exclusive skill, Bravery, is a game changer, as it provides all retinues with Charge Negate. Now, Charge Negate, similar to Charge Reflect, is a defensive tool used to counter enemy charges, but they function slightly differently. Charge Reflect, as the name suggests, will reflect the enemy charge damage back to themselves, but it does not spare your own units from the charge damage, whereas Charge Negate protects your unit from taking any enemy charge damage. Therefore, ideally, you want to combine these two bonuses in order to not only reflect the enemy charge damage back, but also prevent yourself from receiving any of it to harm your own units. Thus, we end up with this ideal hybrid composition here of 4 shielded melee infantry units acting as the front guards, since their shield wall formation can boost their range block chance to 95%, while you can field 2 additional polearm units such as the Protector of Heavens shown here, who naturally come with Charge Reflect to protect your left and right flanks, as AI cavalries tend to prefer flanking maneuvers over straightforward charges. And in my opinion, this is probably the best defensive frontline setup in the game in terms of minimizing your own casualties. But offensively, Sentinels can also shine, as you can utilize the Ignore Forest penalties from Perception, the extra charge speed from Intensity, as well as the 2 bonuses from the 2 exclusive skills that we just talked about, onto units like Yellow Dragon, which has insane charge bonus in an ambush style army setup for devastating damage output. Now lastly, the Sentinel class is the last of 3 classes in the game with access to Composure, which grants fire arrows. So in certain all-ranged army compositions, they can also play the role of 6 range units, such as Onyx Dragons. This is especially true because in addition to the own retinue bonuses, Sentinels also have access to Precision, which provides an own army bonus of 10% extra range damage for armor piercing, and when commanding bonus of 10% extra range firing rate. Now, we did mention earlier that this episode will only focus on own retinue bonuses, so I thought this will just be a good opportunity to highlight that at the end of the day, you're going to need to consider all these factors, including general classes, when commanding bonuses, own army bonuses, own retinue bonuses on the skill tree, as well as from other sources such as traits, background titles, or even items, as all these things will play a part in determining your ideal army composition. And then finally, we have the Vanguard class, which has an astounding 7 skills with their own retinue bonuses. And of these 7, Fury and Passion are class exclusive, providing 25 points of charge bonus to all units and 25% base melee damage to all shot cavalry. Yet despite the sheer number of skills and bonuses here, the Vanguard class surprisingly only have one optimal setup that would utilize all 7 bonuses here, as spamming shot cavalry units synergize well with all these bonuses here. Now this also speaks volume about how strong shot cavalry units are in this game, as melee charge bonus can bypass all defensive stats in the first 10 seconds of engagement after the initial charge, thus making them great at both wiping out enemy units and erasing enemy generals from the battlefield. And once again, this brings us to the concluding points of this episode of Art of War, and here are the 3 main takeaways. First off, own retinue bonuses are a great indicator of the types of retinues that are ideal on each class of generals, as every class has at least one exclusive skill that is tied to a certain type of unit. But just because these exclusive bonuses are often tied to these types of unit of matching color, it does not mean that color coding your retinue is always the best approach, as we have shown a variety of optimal builds with different color units just in this guide. And lastly, this episode was focused on bringing a bottom-up approach to army composition by first taking a look at retinues and own retinue bonuses. But at the end of the day, you must be mindful that other types of bonuses such as own army bonuses and other sources of bonuses such as those from traits or background titles will help you maximize your army's potential. So definitely be mindful of all these things together. And as we wrap it up for this episode of Art of War, I hope you guys enjoyed it. and stay tuned next week when we will continue to explore own army bonuses to complete our introductory discussion on army composition. Until then, bye!